entirely crushed, his secretary wrote. His agitation was often so great that, without being aware of it, he tore at his leg with his nails until the blood flowed. That evening, he emptied the contents of a leather pouch into a glass of wine and drank it. The poison failed to kill him. He would live to see everything he had won taken from him. My father arrived hours ago, Marie-Louise wrote him 2 days later. He will not let me come to you or see you. I am so sad I don't know what to tell you. I kiss you, and I love you with all my heart. On April 20th, Napoleon strode down the stairs at Fontainebleau to address his soldiers one last time. Goodbye, my children. I am leaving. Do not grieve over my fate. I would like to press all of you close to my heart. Let me, at least, embrace your banner. Then he took a regimental flag in his hands and pressed it to his lips. Let this kiss, he said, resonate in the hearts of all my soldiers. Farewell once again. Let this last kiss enter into all your hearts. A British warship carried Napoleon into exile. Just 45 years old, he had won, then lost an empire. As he sailed across the Mediterranean, he came within sight of Corsica, a bitter reminder of how far he had come and how great was his fall. He was given a villa perched on a hillside 100 feet above the sea. Still a sovereign, this would be his new palace, where he was expected to spend the rest of his life. Stripped of his old rank and title, he was granted a new one, Emperor of the Isle of Elba.
When
Napoleon arrives on the island of Elba, his first reaction is one of despair, depression, sadness. But he gets over it quickly, and he's able to regain the two aspects of his personality, work and action. He starts taking care of the island of Elba as though it were a great country.
He set up a miniature court, complete with a grand marshal, ministers of the treasury and war, and even a flag of his own devising. He planted olive and mulberry trees, paved the streets, organized a regular collection of garbage, and let it be known that his subjects, the island's 13,000 peasants, should sleep no more than 5 in a bed.
He still had a lot of genius and ability left in him, but it must have been boredom personified.
Napoleon spent his days on horseback, exploring Elba's meager resources. Often he climbed to his favorite spot on the island, a mountain looking out across the Mediterranean. There, he would spend hours gazing toward Corsica. His connections to the past had been severed. When he learned that Josephine had died at Malmaison, he did not leave his room for 2 days. As the weeks passed, Napoleon grew bored playing at Emperor of Elba. he never took his eye off France, where the Allies had made the mistake of restoring an eager but weak Bourbon king to the throne. King Louis XVIII had neither Napoleon's charm or charisma. France had a constitutional monarchy now, but with royalists threatening to abolish the gains of the Revolution and the economy floundering, the king soon became unpopular. For 10 months, Napoleon watched and waited. Then on February 26, 1815, he slipped off of Elba with a handful of soldiers and eluded British and French warships. After making a mistake or suffering a misfortune, he said, "The man of genius always gets back on his feet." Once ashore, only the king's army would stand between Napoleon and Paris. 6 days after landing in France, he confronted a regiment of infantry ordered to bar his way. Napoleon advanced alone to meet them. "Soldiers," he cried, "if there is one among you who wants to kill his general, his emperor, here I am." Suddenly the soldiers began cheering wildly. "Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor!" 2 weeks later, Napoleon was in the French capital, and Louis XVIII had fled. The news hit Europe like a bombshell. The devil, his enemies said, has been unchained.
And again, the mystique of Napoleon. Here's the emperor. Vive l'empereur, they shouted all the way to Paris. But it was really sort of crazy. He hadn't got a hope.
For months after Napoleon's abdication, the Allies had been at odds with one another as they met in Vienna to hammer out an agreement to determine the shape of post-war Europe. Now, Great Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia united once again. They declared Napoleon an outlaw, an enemy and a disturber of the tranquility of the world, and readied their armies for war.
Il avait toute l'Europe contre lui.
All of Europe was against him. There wasn't a chance of France beating this coalition arrayed against it.
Dressé contre elle.
By the end of May, the British and Prussians had 2 armies in Belgium. Austrian and Russian soldiers were on the way. Napoleon's only hope for survival was one last desperate gamble. He planned to drive a wedge between the British and the Prussians and defeat them before the Austrians and the Russians could arrive. Napoleon raised an army and marched toward Waterloo. Napoleon's fate would be decided on a field of rye and clover, 1 mile long and 3 miles wide. Waiting for him was Great Britain's most formidable soldier, the Duke of Wellington.
Tall, aristocratic, rather arrogant, disdainful, not an enormous amount of imagination, but totally unflinching, nerves of steel. He knew his army, and he knew what they would take, and he knew how to deploy them, and he was superlative on the defensive.
Wellington commanded 68,000 men, but he was counting on 72,000 more. The Prussians, led by Marshal Blücher von Ballstadt. Blücher's greatest wish was to capture Napoleon and have him shot. With Blücher and the Prussians by his side, Wellington would outnumber Napoleon 2 to 1. The Duke impatiently waited for the Prussians to arrive.
Wellington said to Blücher, "For the love of God, come as fast as you can. We'll fight to the last moment to the last man."
But Blücher was still many miles from the battlefield, and Napoleon had sent a sizable force of his own to intercept him. It was not clear whether Blücher would get there on time or at all.